r/AskReddit. People who have worked for a Trump company, what was your experience like? Leading up to the election, I met a couple of people who had worked for Trump. Both of them were planning to vote for him because he had been such a great employer. Still didn't convince me to vote for the guy, but gave me a different perspective. Not going to lie, I don't think most people like their boss well enough to vote for him for president. I would vote for my boss as president so that I'd finally get a new boss. I worked as a valet at his Trump National Golf Club in New Jersey for a handful of years. The job was actually amazing. $11 hour plus whatever tips you make usually came out to about $25 an hour. Got to drive the sickest cars you could imagine. Lambos, Mercedes, Ferraris, and even drove one of Trump's Rolls-Royce Phantoms. For a late high school/college student, it was a dream job. Trump would come around pretty frequently actually. Usually flew in from Manhattan by helicopter. He's actually a very large man, sort of intimidating. Whenever he was on the grounds, he'd usually be surrounded by a cohort of people, so us regular workers never got much interaction with him. But he did tip me a $100 bill once. Apparently when he'd come to the golf club, he'd just have a wad of hundreds and give them out like candy to employees for doing the slightest little things. I didn't realize Trump was a big man until the election. Then, the other day, I saw Paul Ryan standing next to Trump, and Paul Ryan looked taller or the same size. I always thought of Paul Ryan as a short guy. Isn't Trump like 6 feet 4 inches? Paul Ryan is 6 feet 1 inch. Trump is 6 feet 2 inches according to his New York driver's license, but he likes to say he's 6 feet 3 inches or 6 feet 4 inches. Now that he's 70, he's starting to hunch over, so I can see him being the same or a bit shorter than Ryan. I eagerly await the non-political, educational, and non-fabricated posts this question shall surely cultivate. Camel humps actually don't store water. They store fat, and the animal uses it up during long periods when there isn't any food around. Because you didn't say that, actually answer the question. Your wish is my command. Steve Buscemi was an FDNY firefighter. He volunteered during the aftermath of 9/11. My cousin worked as a receptionist for him during the early years of The Apprentice. When she was attacked by her boyfriend's dog, Trump paid for her hospital bills/surgeries and told her she'd still have a job when she was ready to come back. IDK if she voted for him. But she had a good experience working for him. If my boss would do that for me, I'd probably vote for him. My boss would apologize to the dog's owner on my behalf and have the dog's teeth sharpening bill sent to my address. This isn't me personally, but I have some friends that work valet at one of his hotels, Trump National Doral, here in Miami, and they love it. They say it's pretty chill. A normal day's work. They get a good pay and they have seen him a couple times. I guess it's good for them, since they support him. Edit, since everyone wants to overreact. When I said it's nice for them, since they support him, I meant for them to see him. Obviously the job is great. All politics aside, I personally don't give a hit if I see Donald Trump or not. Therefore, the comment. Edit 2 had to lowercase the word overreacted, since people are overreacting over my first edit. If you have nothing to do with my first edit, don't worry about it please. Thank you. I imagine it would also be good for people that don't support him, considering you gave no reason to believe there is anything political involved in their work. Excuse me, but did you just try and attach something from politics? That is unacceptable. Everything is politics. I met the guy a few times, once in Trump Tower and another at the PGA Tour. At the PGA Tour I informally introduced him to my boyfriend, soon to be husband, and TBH one of the nicest guys I ever met. He even said we made a great couple. I'm gay by the way. Wait, so Trump isn't a homophobic fascist? He has a history of supporting gay marriage. He's also on record saying he supports universal healthcare. He knew his audience didn't like these things, so they were never brought up. He does offer a 401k match of 4.5% if you put in 6%. This is a competitive match. 4.5% is higher than the average. That's pretty cool. Beats my 0% matched. My parents went to one of his seminars back in '05, and they described him as a busy man with no time to play around. Most of the seminar was done by his lawyers, but when he was there he was quick to the point and then gone. Before people talk about the seminars only there as a revenue source for him, it was a free seminar certain people were invited to. This thread is really not going the way most in here hoped. Crickler jerk, denied. My French-Canadian immigrant grandfather was a superintendent for one of Fred Trump's buildings, and he met Donald, current POTUS, on multiple occasions as they shared an interest in ice hockey. Donald would visit my grandfather's apartment and watch hockey with him in the living room. My grandpa would always eat pickled cow's tongue while watching hockey. I'm curious if he ever offered Trump any. According to my grandpa, Fred Trump was very kind. Always took the time out to talk to my grandfather when he stopped in to pick up his paycheck. Gave unprompted bonuses before vacations. Take this $100 and buy your kids something. My grandpa accounts it as one of the best working experiences of his life. And he worked that job until retirement. Edit, Junior, Donald. My fault for being stupid. We usually call them Trump Sr. and Trump Jr. colloquially when we talk about it. I forget there's an actual Trump Jr. now. Isn't Sr. the POTUS and his father was Fred Trump? My aunt was no joke his receptionist. I would really need to talk to her for specific stories. She said he always wanted attractive people towards the front. He also used to give crap that was given to him away to employees all the time. Things like gift baskets. I think he also donated to my uncle's, her brother, funeral. So your aunt is hot? That's all I got out of it too. Two of my father's patients worked for Trump, one as one of the pilots, and the other as a flight attendant. They told my father that Trump was always very nice to them and asked them questions about their families. So it seemed pleasant from what they've told my father. It's odd seeing how pleasant he seems in real life. And then watching him and what the media says about him. Very interesting man to say the least. He's not as stupid as Reddit makes him out to be. He definitely knows how and what to do to work a crowd. There have been a lot of threads like this on here. Most people seem to agree that he's the polar opposite of his campaign persona and that he's wonderful to work for, which gives me some hope. The media has done an excellent job of getting people to hate a guy who genuinely wants to do good for them and this country. May not always agree with the methods, but when he says America first, he means it. Recently designed a privately held floor of Trump Tower. His environmental requirements for his building are by far the strictest I've ever seen. He's known to be quite the germaphobe. This going to respond to everyone here because you hit the nail on the head. The filters we had to get in his makeup air unit were not standard. I can't give much away, but our filter reps were thrown off when we gave them the spec book. Indirect gas fired units meant that no CO2/CO1/moisture were getting into his ducts, which is normal for office space, but not for basements, which we were told he used across the building. To put this in perspective, that's an extra $20 grand per floor for something that isn't state code. Past that, every grill had redundant filters. His fans were beyond spark resistant, and he wanted everything aluminum, which is more expensive, but cleaner moisture wise. And while I didn't sell it, he has an energy recovery wheel in his main system, which cuts the electricity consumption in half. I've answered this before. Donald Trump came into the movie theater I used to work at, and I served him at the concession stand. He asked about the flavors of our slushes. They were white cherry and cotton candy. He got the cotton candy. Donald Trump enjoys cotton candy, and I literally know that for a fact forever now. He also paid in exact change. I think I actually remember you from a previous thread. Yeah. I have definitely read this comment before. So I worked for a Trump hotel who he only bought the property of and had nothing to do with the history of the resort itself. The big thing people need to know is that for the most part Trump is more of the mascot than anything else. Ivanka and Eric were running the show much more. If they were walking around you had a good chance of speaking with them, and they are very nice people. Eric and his support for Street Dude is also really fantastic stuff and I always loved to see how much money we would gather. The company is very fair and the standards for operation are what you will see at any 4 and 4 diamond resort. Sadly, business at my hotel was hit pretty hard because of his run for presidency. Many groups would cancel because they didn't want to be associated with him. Stinks because you're hurting all those workers much more than they ever hurt him. But the saddest thing I think that happened because of Trump was that the hotel lost a big part of its history because the PGA is no longer going to be hosted there. Decades of history gone because of a comment of his. So all in all, as far as employment goes, the company is great and fair. But his run for presidency has had an effect on the history of some hotels, sadly. Decades of history gone because of a comment of his. Only one. Yup. The PGA decided not to return way back during the Trump campaign. It was the Mexican statement. I hate that this got downvoted because I'm somewhat curious too. I know a guy who works security details for Kraft, the owner of the Patriots. One of his jobs was to pick up guests at the airport in a town car and drive them to the stadium to the Pats game. It could be Steven Tyler, Lemons, anyone. He said he drove Trump twice. He didn't say much about him. Some people like to talk on the driveway down. Some don't. Trump liked to talk. Part of the time pontificating. Part of the time asking questions. At the end, he tried to slip him $100 as a tip, which was absolutely forbidden. The guy said absolutely not. Kraft takes care of us and the gesture is appreciated. But please. I'll just get in trouble. Uneventful. But not UN polite. What stuck out to the guy was about 3 or 4 years later. He picks Trump up again. Shook his hand as he got into the car. And remember his name. His wife's name. Little things about the small talk the last time on the way down. Then tried to tip him even more money on the way out. Of all the people he probably interacted with over that period of time, the dude was blown away. Trump could recall all of that. Not thinking it's because he cared, but just because that's actually kinda impressive. I'm divorcing my politics and personal opinion of him, and just relating what someone who had first-hand experience with him told me. That doesn't surprise me. It reminds me a lot of Bill Clinton, actually, and how he was also fantastic at remembering people. That kind of skill at memory is essential for networking, which is something both Clinton and Trump are good at. Those who rise to the top in their fields, particularly business and politics, are very good at networking. Some might argue that's all they're good at, but that's another story altogether. My buddy's girlfriend works at the Starbucks in Manhattan's Trump Tower. It's mostly like any other Starbucks, except for the heightened security, as well as redneck tourist Trump fans coming in there and striking up political conversations. There haven't been any major incidents. I would assume that she's an employee of Starbucks, not Trump. I would also assume that. But there weren't a lot of replies to the thread and I just wanted to feel like I mattered for 3 seconds. I worked at one of his country clubs. When he came in, the whole place did a complete 180. Wages went up, and the whole place became much nicer. When he bought it from other people. Yeah, it was a private company and he came in and made the place great. Remember that not all Trump companies are Trump companies. For example, I live next door to a Trump building on the East Coast. It's a 20-story luxury apartment/condo building. Here is the thing though. He didn't build it. A separate company built it. And now pays him to have his name on it. They don't work for him. And are not his people. But that doesn't stop people from getting upset that his company has legs here. I'm assuming a lot of companies are not run by him and just pay for his name. Keep that in mind when reading these stories. I'm not saying Trump isn't a scumbag. But I've seen people complain about the staff of that complex and criticize the culture he has implemented there, when in reality that's just the way high-end companies go about business. This is true. I believe a frontline story read ET and HRC on PBS ran before election. It said he was able to keep his brand, his name on buildings, etc. after bankruptcy because it was considered a valuable commodity. It said he makes most of his money from selling his name. Exactly. There were some protesters there the other day that woke me up chanting. I doubt DT even knows this building exists. He likely has a guy that just goes out and shops his name for a yearly fee. DT probably set a few parameters for what he's willing to endorse to streamline the process. I know we all want to bend old Donnie over the barrel and give it to him. But can you at least do your homework and be intelligent about it? Otherwise you just get laughed at. Hell, I laughed at them and I registered as a Republican to vote against him. I heard an interview on NPR with financial news reporter who had been sued by Trump over his coverage Taj Mahal. In the end they asked him who he was voting for, and he said he would vote for Trump because he was a brilliant marketer and a generally nice guy.